You ever have one of those days where you think, well, at least it can't get any worse, and the universe immediately takes that as a personal challenge? Yeah. That was my Christmas Eve. I was sitting alone in my apartment, eating cold takeout and scrolling through Instagram like some masochistic ritual. Every post was another blow. My family gathered around a 12-foot Christmas tree, everyone wearing matching reindeer pajamas. Mom was smiling like she hadn't spent the last 6 months ignoring my texts. Dad was beaming under a banner that read, "Family is everything," which was ironic, considering I apparently wasn't included in that definition. Front and center was my brother Zach, golden child of the century, clinking glasses with my parents as if he hadn't run his credit into the ground before turning 30. The caption read, "Surround yourself with those who matter most, Red Heart." Cute. I was about to close the app when my buzzer went off. I almost didn't answer. But curiosity is a disease, and apparently I'm terminal. The courier handed me a fat manila envelope with my name printed on the front in aggressive block letters. No return address. Just vibes. Bad ones? I tore it open. Inside was a stack of documents. For a second, I thought maybe it was some late-arriving holiday card from my parents. You know, the kind with a passive-aggressive note about how they miss my presence. Nope. It was an invoice. $52,000. Due immediately. I flipped to the next page and saw it, a financing agreement for a brand new Audi Q7. In bold at the top, co-signer, Tyler Jameson. That's me. Or, more accurately, that's the version of me my brother apparently forged into existence. I stared at the signature line. It was my name, all right, just slightly too neat, like Zach had Googled how to sign someone else's name without getting caught. Spoiler, he did not, in fact, manage to avoid getting caught. Tucked between the pages was a handwritten note on a scrap of lined paper. Zach's handwriting, unmistakable in its lazy scrawl. "Hey bro, thanks for helping out. Mom and Dad said you'd understand since you're doing so well. Appreciate you. Happy holidays!" I read it 3 times, hoping it would magically turn into something else. A prank. A mistake. A cosmic joke that would end with a hidden camera crew jumping out of my closet to say, "Surprise! You're on America's Most Exploited Relatives." No such luck. I set the papers on my coffee table and pressed my palms to my eyes until I saw little fireworks. My heart was hammering like it wanted to evacuate my chest. They really did it. They actually forged my signature to buy Zach a luxury car. And then, as if that wasn't enough, they had the audacity to assume I'd just pay for it. Like it was a given. Like I was the family's personal bailout plan. Outside my window, snow was falling in that picture-perfect way it does in Christmas movies. For a second, I let myself imagine I was one of those people, someone with a warm family waiting to greet me, not a pack of entitled predators in festive sweaters. But reality doesn't come with a soundtrack or a happy montage. Reality was a $52,000 bill I didn't authorize and a family that saw me as nothing more than a convenient credit score. I picked up Zach's note again. Read the last line. "Appreciate you." I laughed. Really laughed. One of those sharp, humorless sounds that feels closer to a scream than anything else. Because here's the thing, I did understand. I understood exactly who they were. And for the first time in my life, I realized I was finally ready to do something about it. It's funny how people love to say, "Family is everything," usually right before they do something that proves they don't actually believe it. If you need proof, let's rewind a couple of decades to my early years as the family understudy. Growing up, the script was always the same. Zach was the star, and I was the reliable extra in the background. If Zach got a B+, it was a triumph. "Look how smart he is!" If I got an A, it was, "Well, academics aren't everything, Tyler." Zach had the deluxe childhood package, private soccer coaches, guitar lessons he quit after 2 weeks, and a birthday party with a magician who made my allowance disappear. Me? I got hand-me-down sneakers and a lot of lectures about the character-building power of going without. I remember being 11 and watching Zach tear the wrapping paper off his first gaming console. Dad looked at me and said, "You'll appreciate things more when you buy them yourself." At the time, I thought that was normal. Now I see it for what it was, a polite way of saying, You don't matter as much. As we got older, Zach's failures became family emergencies, while my achievements were inconveniences. When he racked up $15,000 in credit card debt from investing in crypto, read gambling on Dogecoin, my parents held a family intervention to figure out how to rescue him. When I got my first promotion, Mom said, "That's nice, but can you call your brother? He's feeling down." This wasn't a one-off. It was a pattern. I was the walking contingency plan. The ATM with a heartbeat. If Zach needed money, I was expected to chip in because you're so good with finances. When I pushed back, Dad would sigh like I'd personally betrayed the family unit. One time, Zach called me at 2 a.m., voice slurred from whatever bar he turned into his office that week. He needed $800 to pay his rent. I'd already bailed him out twice that year. I told him no. He cried. He actually cried. Said he'd end up homeless if I didn't help. My parents called me the next day, furious that I'd abandoned my brother. When I reminded them I had my own bills to pay, Mom went quiet for a beat before saying, "But you make so much more. You should be grateful you're in a position to help." Yeah. Grateful. That was the word she always used when she meant obligated. I wish I could say I had some big epiphany right then. That I stood up for myself and slammed the phone down. But the truth is, I transferred the money. Because back then, I still believed that if I just did enough, helped enough, gave enough, they'd see me as something more than a fallback plan. Fast forward a few years. Zach's bad decisions just kept getting bigger. There was the Bali vacation he charged to a credit card he'd already maxed out. The wellness app he launched that never made it past the prototype stage. The $4,000 leather jacket he insisted was an investment in his personal brand. Every time, my parents swooped in with excuses. "He's just finding himself. He has a creative spirit." Meanwhile, I was expected to show up with my checkbook and a smile. And when I didn't, they called me selfish, ungrateful, cold. I don't know when exactly the resentment started calcifying inside me. Maybe it was the day I realized Zach would always be the priority, no matter how many times he screwed up. Maybe it was every time my parents bragged about my stable job but never once asked if I was happy. Or maybe it was when I caught myself writing out another check for a debt I didn't create, just to avoid the guilt trip. Because here's the truth no one likes to admit: being the responsible one doesn't make you respected. It just makes you convenient. So when that $52,000 invoice arrived, I didn't just see a car I never bought. I saw every time I'd been told to be grateful, every time I'd been shamed for saying no, every time I'd been reminded that my worth was measured by how much I could give. And for the first time in my life, I felt something besides guilt. I felt done. A week after the invoice, I thought maybe, just maybe, the universe would give me a reprieve. Like I'd hit my quota of absurdity for the month. You'd think so, right? Turns out, the universe has a sixth sense of humor. It was the morning of December 26th. I woke up to a string of notifications lighting up my phone. I tried to ignore them, but curiosity won out, like always. The first thing I saw was my mother's Facebook post, a carousel of Christmas photos. My family clustered around a fireplace that looked like it had been ripped straight from a lifestyle magazine. Everyone wore matching red pajamas with "The Jameson Crew" embroidered on the chest. Cute. All smiling, like they hadn't spent the last year treating me like a walking Venmo balance. There was Zach, front and center, holding a gift bag from some luxury brand he probably can't pronounce. Dad was carving a massive roast, looking smug as ever. Mom's caption: "Surround yourself with love this season. Family is everything." I scrolled through the pictures in a daze, waiting for some sign that maybe, just maybe, I'd been invited. That my absence was a misunderstanding. Maybe my invite had gotten lost, or stuck in the mail, or hidden behind Zach's overdue credit card statements. But no. There was no empty chair with my name on it. No mention of me at all. I called Mom, heart thumping like I was about to audition for a part one already knew I wouldn't get. She picked up on the third ring, her voice bright and brittle. "Tyler! Merry Christmas!" I took a breath. "Hey. Just wondering if you guys did something yesterday. I saw some photos." Silence. A soft exhale. "Oh. Well, we thought you'd be busy. Busy with what? She paused, just long enough for me to hear the lie forming. You know how Zach gets when he feels overshadowed. There it was. The truth, wrapped in a bow of polite deflection. They hadn't invited me because my presence made Zach feel insecure. You didn't think I'd want to see you all? I asked, my voice doing that tight, brittle thing it does when I'm trying not to shout. It's complicated, she said. We didn't want any tension. You understand? No, I said quietly. I don't. I hung up before she could add anything else. I set my phone on the counter and stared at it, half waiting for it to ring again. It didn't. Instead, an hour later, I got a text from Zach. It was almost impressive how he managed to be both dismissive and entitled in a single sentence. Hey man, sorry you missed the party. Anyway, could you chip in $300 for Mom's gift? We all split it. I stared at the message until my eyes blurred. Then I laughed. A short, humorless bark that bounced off the walls of my empty kitchen. Of course. Of course they hadn't invited me. Of course they still wanted my money. Because in their eyes, that's all I was good for. I didn't respond. 2 hours later, my phone lit up again. This time, it was Aunt Lisa. The only person in my family who ever seemed to see through the performance. She didn't bother with small talk. Honey, I'm so sorry. I thought you knew. Knew what? I asked. The party. They planned it months ago. Your mom said it was better if it was just immediate family. I swallowed. That's what she said? She said you'd understand, Aunt Lisa said quietly. And that you were difficult lately. Difficult. That was rich, considering I'd spent my entire adult life making things easy for them. Thanks for telling me. I managed. You deserve better, Tyler, she said. You always have. After we hung up, I sat there in the half-dark, phone still clutched in my hand. My chest felt hollow in that way it does when you realize something you've been trying not to admit. It wasn't just the invoice. Or the party. Or Zach's smug texts. It was everything. All the years of being tolerated rather than loved. Valued only for what I could provide. I used to think if I just kept giving, more time, more money, more understanding, they'd eventually see me as more than the backup plan. That they'd look at me the way they looked at Zach, with something approaching respect. But as I sat there in my quiet apartment, scrolling past their smiling faces, I understood something with a clarity so sharp it almost hurt. They were never going to see me any other way. And maybe it was time I stopped trying. The next morning, I woke up to the same question looping in my brain like a broken record. What are you going to do about it? Because if there's one thing my family taught me, it's that silence is the only approval they actually care about. If you don't push back, they'll just keep taking your time, your money, your dignity, until there's nothing left. And for years I let them. I let them guilt me. I let them frame me as selfish whenever I tried to set a boundary. I let them treat me like a second-string player in the championship game of Zach's life. But not this time. The first thing I did was decline their invitation to the annual New Year's Day brunch. You know, the one they sent at 2 a.m. via group text, as if that somehow made up for not inviting me to Christmas. The message was so tone-deaf, it was almost art. Hey Ty! Hope you're having a restful holiday. We'd love to see you for brunch, just family, nothing fancy red heart. Right. Just family. The same family that left me out of their matching pajamas photo op. I didn't bother crafting a diplomatic reply. I just typed. Thanks, but I won't be joining. No explanation. No apology. Just a clean, polite no. The second thing I did was block Zach's number. I was tired of the constant drip feed of entitlement disguised as banter. If he needed someone to cover his next big idea, he'd have to look elsewhere. Maybe he could crowdfund his ego this time. And then, because I knew I couldn't spend another day alone in that apartment replaying every slight like a highlight reel, I called my friend Mark. Mark is the kind of friend who never made me feel like I had to audition for basic decency. The kind of friend who once drove across town at 3 a.m. because I texted, I don't want to be alone right now. Hey, I said when he picked up. My voice sounded hoarse. Got room for one more at your New Year's thing? Tyler, he said without missing a beat. You have a permanent reservation. So on New Year's Eve, I packed a small bag, turned off my phone, and drove across town. When I walked into Mark's parents' house, I was met with the smell of chili simmering on the stove, and the easy warmth of people who didn't expect me to be anything other than myself. Mark's dad clapped me on the back like I'd just scored the winning goal in a game I didn't even know I was playing. His mom handed me a mug of mulled cider and said, "We're glad you're here." And she meant it. No hidden agenda. No subtext. Just simple, unqualified welcome. I spent the night sitting around their kitchen table, listening to stories, laughing at Mark's terrible puns, and for the first time in months, I felt my chest unclench. At midnight, we gathered in the living room to toast the new year. Mark's dad raised his glass and said, "To family, both born and chosen." Everyone clinked glasses. I just stood there, blinking fast so nobody could see my eyes watering. Because in that moment, I realized something I should have understood years ago. Love doesn't come with invoices. It doesn't require you to bankrupt yourself emotionally, or literally, to earn a seat at the table. After the toast, Mark pulled me aside and said, "You know you don't owe them anything, right?" I nodded, but I don't think I really believed it until that night. When I finally went to bed in their guest room, on sheets that smelled like fabric softener, and something vaguely comforting, I felt a quiet resolve settle in my bones. No more excuses. No more half measures. If my family was going to treat me like a wallet with a name attached, then it was time to show them exactly how empty that wallet could be when I finally stopped playing along. The next morning, as sunlight pooled across the hardwood floor, I sipped my coffee and thought about all the times I'd convinced myself I was obligated to keep showing up for people who never showed up for me. And for the first time, I understood that walking away isn't selfish. It's survival. If you've never tried to cut off an entitled family member, let me save you some suspense. They don't take it well. I thought ignoring the New Year's brunch would be a quiet signal. You know, a subtle, dignified way of saying, "I'm not doing this anymore." Turns out, subtlety was wasted on people who needed an engraved plaque to understand basic boundaries. It started with a voicemail from Dad. His voice was calm in that patronizing way he used when I was a kid who'd asked for something unreasonable, like equal treatment. "Tyler, your mother and I are concerned. We saw you didn't respond to Zach's text about the car. This is a family matter, and you're making it unnecessarily complicated. Call us back." Right. I was making it complicated, by refusing to pay for a car I never agreed to co-sign. I didn't call back. 2 hours later, Zach's number popped up. I watched the screen vibrate across the counter like it was trying to crawl away in shame. I let it go to voicemail. Then came the texts. "Zach. Dude, this is messed up. Mom said you were being chill about it." Zach. "It's not that big of a deal." Zach. "Seriously, just handle it. You make 6 figures." Zach. "Don't be an ass." I set the phone down. Made lunch. Tried to pretend the buzzing notifications weren't eroding my sanity one dopamine-depleting ding at a time. That evening, I finally called my father. I figured if they were going to keep badgering me, I might as well get it over with. He picked up immediately. "Tyler." "Dad?" I said. My voice came out steadier than I felt. "I got the invoice. You know I didn't co-sign that loan." He sighed, like I just confessed to failing a math test. "Your mother signed on your behalf." For a second, I thought I'd misheard. "Excuse me?" "She signed your name," he repeated, as if this were a perfectly reasonable family errand, like borrowing a cup of sugar or committing fraud. "You realize that's illegal," I said, my voice cracking. He exhaled again, the world's most exhausted victim. "Tyler, don't be selfish. Zach needed help." Something inside me snapped, quietly, like a rubber band finally giving up after being stretched too thin for too long. "Did you even consider asking me?" I asked. "You're never reasonable," he said. "You would have just said no." "Yeah," I said, my throat tight. "I would have." That seemed to end the conversation. He hung up without another word. An hour later, Zach tried again. This time, it was a string of voice messages. His tone swung between defensive and pleading, like he couldn't decide whether to guilt-trip me or insult me. "You always act like you're so much better than everyone. You're not. You're just lucky. Mom and Dad did everything for you, too. You're blowing this way out of proportion. It's just money. We're family. Just money. Just family. Funny how those words only come out when someone else's screw-up is about to land on my doorstep. I didn't reply. That night, as I was brushing my teeth, my phone buzzed again. A security alert from my bank. Suspicious login attempt detected. I froze. My toothbrush still in my mouth, foam dripping onto my t-shirt. I logged in, heart thudding. Someone had tried to access my savings account using an unrecognized device. I didn't have to guess who it was. The old laptop I'd left in my parents' garage, the one I'd used to file my taxes before I finally got smart enough to lock everything behind two-factor authentication. I changed every password I had. Bank, email, credit monitoring. Set up fraud alerts with all 3 bureaus. By the time I finished, it was past midnight. I was exhausted, shaking with that special kind of adrenaline that only comes from realizing your own family is willing to steal from you without blinking. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment that led here. Every time I'd been called selfish for not giving enough. Every time I'd told myself they'd stop if I just helped one more time. But they never stopped. Because why would they? I'd taught them exactly how to treat me. And now, finally, I was done teaching that lesson. The next morning, I woke up with the kind of clarity that only arrives after your family tries to rob you in your sleep. It was the realization that no amount of phone calls or guilt trips was going to fix this. I wasn't dealing with a misunderstanding. I was dealing with people who genuinely believed I existed to fund their bad decisions. So I did something I never thought I'd have the nerve to do. I called a lawyer. Her name was Marissa, sharp, no nonsense, the kind of voice that made me sit up straighter even though we were talking over speakerphone. After I explained everything, the forged signature, the invoice, the attempted account hack, she let out a low whistle. Mr. Jameson, she said, what you're describing isn't just a family dispute. It's identity theft and fraud. Hearing her say it out loud made it real in a way I hadn't been ready for. She continued, if you want to pursue this, we can start the process of having the loan removed from your credit. You also have grounds to press charges. I rubbed my temple. Press charges. Against my own brother and parents. She didn't flinch. It's your decision. But let me be clear, doing nothing is the same as giving them permission to do it again. That sentence settled in my chest like a stone. I told her I'd call back. I spent the afternoon pacing my living room. Every few minutes, I'd catch myself looking at old photos on the shelves, pictures of birthdays, graduations, holidays that felt real at the time. It was almost laughable, how easily they'd been able to disguise exploitation as family tradition. Around 5 p.m., I poured myself a drink and called Marissa back. My hand was shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. I want to move forward, I said. Understood, she replied calmly. We'll begin with a formal fraud report to the lender. You'll need to sign affidavits. After that, we can discuss pressing charges. I exhaled. It felt like shedding a skin I didn't realize I'd outgrown. 2 hours later, my phone rang. It was Dad. I answered because I knew if I didn't, he'd just keep calling until I lost my mind. Tyler, he started, voice brittle. Your mother is very upset. Yeah? I said. She should be. She committed a felony. He ignored that. We heard you hired an attorney. You're going to destroy this family over a misunderstanding? It wasn't a misunderstanding, I said evenly. You knew exactly what you were doing. A pause. Then the threat I'd been waiting for. If you go through with this, he said, you're dead to us. Do you understand? You will not be welcome in this family again. For a second, I almost laughed. Like he was offering me some kind of limited-time ultimatum. That's not a difficult choice, I said, my voice steady in a way that surprised even me. He hung up. 5 minutes later, Zach's number lit up my phone. I let it go to voicemail. The transcript popped up a minute later. You're pathetic. We all laugh about how you think you're better than everyone. You're nothing without us. I read it twice, just to let it sink in. Then I blocked his number. The next morning, I sat with Marissa in her office. She slid a thick stack of documents across the table, everything I needed to officially dispute the loan and file the fraud report. I signed every page without hesitation. As I initialed the last line, something in me shifted. I realized this was it. The end of the charade. The moment I stopped pretending that family meant loyalty, or love, or anything more than an endless ledger of debts I never agreed to. When I left her office, I felt lighter. Like I'd set down a load I'd been carrying so long I forgot what it was like not to hurt under its weight. Outside, the sky was gray and drizzling, but I didn't care. Because for the first time, I was doing something not out of obligation, but out of respect for myself. And it felt like freedom. You'd think after I filed the fraud report and blocked Zach's number, my family would take the hint and crawl back into whatever entitlement burrow they came from. But no. Apparently, when you take away their access to your wallet, they just get creative. The first sign came in the form of a screenshot my friend Mark sent me. It was a Facebook post from Zach, complete with a crying selfie. Sometimes the people you love the most betray you in ways you never imagined. Please keep my family in your prayers during this difficult time. The comments were exactly what you'd expect. Emily T. Stay strong, babe. Red Heart. Chad R. Family over money, always. Kristen S. Your brother sounds toxic AF. I actually had to sit down because I was laughing so hard. The guy who forged my signature was painting himself as the victim of my selfishness. Then, just when I thought it couldn't get dumber, I got an email from HR at my company. Subject line: Concern re well-being? Apparently, my father had called my office. Claimed I was unstable, making irrational financial decisions, and might be a danger to myself. The HR director, Sandra, who has the patience of a saint, called me directly. Tyler, I'm only reaching out because this is so outlandish. I wanted you to hear it from me first. I felt my face flush hot. He actually said that? He did, Sandra said gently. And then he tried to get your emergency contact updated to him. I closed my eyes. Took a slow breath. I'm sorry you had to deal with that. She snorted. Please. I've seen messy divorces between coworkers. If it helps, I don't believe a word of it. That was the thing about finally telling the truth, people could see it on you. My boss knew I wasn't some unhinged man spiraling into bankruptcy. I was a guy whose family couldn't stand the fact that I'd stopped enabling them. After we hung up, I made a list of every account I still had linked to my old information. Credit cards. Insurance. Even that sad little Amazon account I'd once shared with Mom so she could order a few things. And proceeded to rack up $2,000 in questionable decor. I changed everything. New passwords. Two-factor authentication. Security questions no one could guess. What was your childhood nickname? Answer: none. You were too busy praising Zach. I even set up credit monitoring alerts. It felt excessive. Paranoid. But also necessary. Because 2 days later, it happened again. An email from Experian. Alert: new credit application detected. Someone, I wonder who, had tried to open a personal loan in my name. This time, for $20,000. I called the fraud department so fast I almost dropped my phone. The rep was sympathetic. Family? She asked when I explained. Yeah, I said, rubbing my eyes. Family. It was surreal, watching them sink deeper into desperation while I finally stood still. I'd always assumed if I stopped giving, they'd just move on to someone else. But that wasn't how this worked. My no had become a threat to their entire narrative, that they were good parents, good siblings, that this was all normal. And if there's one thing entitled people can't stand, it's the mirror you hold up when you finally say, enough. That night, I went to Mark's place again. His dad was in the garage, working on an old motorcycle. Rough week? He asked when he saw my face. You could say that. He handed me a wrench. Wanna help? I wasn't mechanically inclined. But there was something about holding a tool, focusing on something tangible, that quieted my mind. We worked in silence. The good kind. No judgment. No demands. When we finished, Mark's dad wiped his hands and looked at me. You know, he said, There's a difference between cutting people off because you're petty and cutting them off because you finally respect yourself. I swallowed. Which one do you think I am? He didn't even pause. The second one. On the drive home, I realized he was right. Setting boundaries didn't make me cruel. It just meant I was finally refusing to participate in my own exploitation. And as much as they wanted to pretend otherwise, they no longer got a vote. The invitation came in the form of a text from my mother. We'd like to sit down as a family and talk this out. Tomorrow. 6 p.m. Your father insists. There was something almost impressive about her tone, like she was summoning me to a disciplinary hearing rather than begging me to reverse the consequences of their fraud. I thought about ignoring it. But part of me wanted to hear them say it all to my face. No more phone calls. No more filtered captions about family love. Just the raw, unvarnished truth of what they really were. So I texted back. I'll be there. I didn't tell Mark. I didn't want backup. I needed to walk in alone and prove to myself that I wasn't scared anymore. When I arrived, the dining room looked exactly the same as it did when I was a kid. Polished table, the smell of roast chicken, candles lit like this was some sacred ritual. Dad was at the head of the table, arms folded, jaw tight. Mom sat next to him, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue that somehow stayed perfectly white. Zach was slouched in his chair, scrolling his phone like he couldn't be bothered to look up. I took the empty seat across from them. Nobody spoke for a moment. Just the soft tick of the grandfather clock in the hall. Finally, Dad cleared his throat. Tyler, we're here because you've blown this entire situation out of proportion. I leaned back, crossing my arms. You forged my signature on a $52,000 loan. Mom sniffled. It was meant to be temporary. We thought you'd understand. You didn't even ask me, I said. Zach finally looked up. You're acting like some kind of victim. It's not that serious. You make enough to cover it. I stared at him. And that makes it okay? He shrugged, like I just asked him whether he preferred Coke or Pepsi. Dad leaned forward, his eyes hard. This is your family. Family helps each other. You're the only one making this ugly. I felt something settle in my chest, a kind of calm I'd never known around them. No, I said evenly. I'm the only one telling the truth. Mom's voice wavered. Tyler, if you go through with this lawsuit, if you force this. You mean the lawsuit you forced by committing fraud? I interrupted. Her mouth snapped shut. For a second, nobody spoke. The candles flickered. I realized they'd expected me to fold the moment I walked through the door. To back down, like I always had. But that version of me was gone. Zach scoffed. Nobody likes you, you know. You think you're so much better because you have a good job? You're pathetic. I smiled. A small, genuine smile that felt almost warm. That's the most honest thing you've ever said to me. His face flushed red. Dad's voice dropped to a low growl. If you don't stop this, if you don't pay off that car, we're done. You will not be welcome in this family. I let the silence stretch so long, Mom shifted in her seat. And then I said it. The sentence I'd been carrying in my chest like a lit fuse. That's not a difficult choice. Mom sucked in a sharp breath. Dad's jaw flexed. Zach looked like he wanted to throw something. I stood. My hands were steady. My voice was steady. You want me to clean up Zach's messes forever. You want me to pretend this is normal. But it isn't. And I'm done. I turned to leave. My palm was already on the doorframe when I paused. I glanced back over my shoulder. Tell Zach to buy a car he can actually afford next time. And then I walked out into the cold night air, feeling lighter than I had in years. The next week was quieter than I expected. No calls. No texts. Just a sudden, hollow silence where their demands used to be. Marissa called to tell me the bank approved my fraud claim. The debt was wiped clean. A settlement was negotiated, my legal fees covered, and all communication now had to go through her. No more threats. No more guilt. Just a clean, final line drawn in the sand. Zach tried to save face on social media. A vague post about some people turning their back on family. I didn't even care enough to read the comments. Instead, I spent the holidays with Mark's family, ate too much food, laughed until my stomach hurt, sat around their tree as Mark's dad lifted a glass and said, "To choosing self-respect." For the first time, I raised my own glass without hesitation. Because maybe that's what real family is, the people who never ask you to set yourself on fire just to keep them warm. And as the year ended, I realized I wasn't grieving what I'd lost. I was celebrating what I'd finally chosen.